Hello, my name is Kyle Hirschfeld, and this week I will be talking to you about the difficulty in finding accurate and true descriptions of wartime atrocities during Vietnam. Gary Kulnick and Peter Zinnemann, in their article Misrepresenting Atrocities, Kill Anything That Moves and the Continuing Distortions of the War in Vietnam, assert that most recent work on military atrocities, such as John Horst and Alan Kramer's Magisterial German Atrocities, 1914, A History of Denial, insist that primary and secondary sources on the topic must be treated with special care since they are notoriously vulnerable to politicization and distortion. So people will often take these events, these atrocities, and turn them for their own ends, whether that's to stop the war in Vietnam in the case of the My Lai massacre, or to further its continuance in the case of atrocities against Americans. Research in folklore and oral history has drawn attention to the proliferation of the apocryphal war stories involving prisoners thrown from helicopters, spat upon veterans, and grotesque episodes of genital mutilation. After hearing identical tales, told many times over during the course of hundreds of interviews with Vietnam veterans, it has been concluded that stories such as those call for a certain suspension of disbelief. Not everybody could have suffered the same atrocities or the same indignations at the hands of their enemies. So those are two different possibilities for why it is difficult to nail down truth in atrocity accounts. In his review of My Lai, An American Atrocity in the Vietnam War by William Thomas Allison, Kendrick Oliver says that military investigators also gathered hundreds of first-hand accounts from perpetrators, bystanders, and victims of the My Lai massacre, but constructing an authoritative narrative of events in the village from this archive of partial, sometimes self-interested, and often contradictory testimony represents a different order of challenge. So because people didn't always stay in the same spot, even though they were all assigned to certain companies, soldiers crossed and crisscrossed the terrain, exchanging companions as they went, occasionally setting out on their own, idling at some killing site, moving quickly past others, as if browsing the opportunities for atrocity. It's hard to say who committed a certain act, or what act was committed by which individuals. So that is another reason that it is difficult to nail down truth in stories of atrocity. And finally, in a study performed by Paul A. Dennis, Nora M. Dennis, Elizabeth E. Van Voorhees, called Moral Transgression During the Vietnam War, a path analysis of the psychological impact of veterans' involvement in wartime atrocities, they assert that combat veterans with PTSD are prone to over-report their symptoms, and it is possible that they are also prone to over-report past experiences or to exaggerate those past experiences. So even tales from primary sources can be risky, as PTSD tends to be a force of exaggeration. Furthermore, the implication that treatments aimed at ameliorating PTSD symptoms might actually be insufficient for reducing risk or of harm to others and self in cases of moral injury. Moral injury being those ideas of atrocities. So when you participate or take part in mutilations or what have you, there's a certain step beyond PTSD, which would be moral injury, so injury to the soul. Anyway, these are all issues which have made it difficult for historians in the past to explore wartime atrocities. So during the Vietnam War, it's especially difficult because it is such a widely reported event happening for many different reasons, both political and moral. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.